Daniel, well, aren't all date prophecies based on Daniel somewhere. But they had this prophecy where 2,520 years after the fall of Jerusalem would be when Christ returns. And to make that fit for 1914, Jerusalem had to fall in 607 BC. They say BCE. They use the Common Era stuff. Well, there's one little problem. Every single work on history written by anyone of any religion says that Jerusalem fell in Nebuchadnezzar in 586, 587. Now, why would there be a 586, 587? Because not everybody measured years January to December. So Jerusalem fell to Nebuchadnezzar in 586, not 607. So this guy, Raymond Franz is his name, by the way. This guy, and you can still go back. I still have the books, the unexpurgated ones, in my library, because they can't get to my library. They can get to theirs, they can't get to mine. Wrote entire articles doing nothing but attacking all of the evidence for 586 without ever establishing 607. But that's what they produced for their people. And we're talking there are literally thousands of cuneiform tablets in libraries around the world with clear dates on them. I mean, there is a clear dating of the succession of Babylonian kings and the whole nine yards. It's, the books are extremely boring to read, but they're very, very, very detailed. We know when Nebuchadnezzar lived. We know when he took Jerusalem. I mean, it's as documented as any ancient date can be documented. And yet, for years, the Watchtower cites 607, 607, 607. Now they don't talk about it anymore. And eventually, they'll probably publish something that says 586 and get in line with everybody else, because they will have dumped the 1914 prophecy, and so it won't be relevant. But this is the kind of stuff, it's out there. It happens. And these cults are willing to change history and alter the facts and alter the quotations, alter the sources. But even quote-unquote Christians did that. As we will see in the medieval period, the greatest period of development in the concept of the papacy took place during a period of time where the most popular sources of quotations from the early church fathers were filled with pure bogus citations. And the papacy, literally, when you look at, for example, I think someone looked at Thomas Aquinas' discussion of the papacy, 98% of his patristic citations are fraudulent. Not because he made them up. The sources that he thought were true had made them up. And so in reality, when you think about it, the papacy as an institution historically hangs in midair. Its entire foundation that developed in the early church and all the rest of that stuff has been washed away. The quotes never existed. The early writers didn't believe the things that they later thought they did. And yet you still got the papacy hanging there literally in historical midair. Nothing underneath it. But it's still there. And the zealous Roman Catholic says, it's the church of 2,000 years. No, actually, it isn't. But. So, 7 epistles. We will look at what we're not going to read all 7 epistles, but there are some incredible statements, especially of Christology, in those epistles. But the one last thing I'll say is, he went to Rome and he asked all the people on the way, do not attempt to stop this from happening. I desire martyrdom. And so that's one of the issues that we'll talk about is the early church and the subject of martyrdom and some of the imbalances that took place there as well. Okay? So we'll get to Ignatius next week. All right, let's close the word. Father, we do thank you for this time. We thank you for the opportunity and freedom we have to consider the history of your working with your people. We ask that we would be guided by this. You'd be with us now as we go into worship, as we open your word. May you be honored and glorified in all that takes place. We pray in Christ's name.